Welcome to the Dance Reel podcast. I'm Kate Histon. To be part of our community, subscribe or follow this channel. This episode was sponsored by Master Dancer Mindset. Know yourself, be yourself, and express yourself on and off the stage. Today on the Dance Reel podcast, I'm joined by Dr. Stephanie Potreck, a medical doctor and nutritionist who has dedicated her career to supporting dancers' health. Training in medicine across Germany, the UK and Switzerland, driven by the clear connection she saw between dancers' burnout, injuries and poor nutrition. She went on to complete advanced training in nutritional medicine for doctors and a postgrad diploma in sports nutrition. Stephanie now runs a virtual clinic, Oz Dancers Overseas, where she works with dancers experiencing disordered eating and eating disorders using a holistic approach, grounded in both medical science and in real-world understanding of dance. She's a passionate advocate for safer dance environments and speaks openly about the realities many dancers face behind the scenes. In our conversation, we explore her journey from dancer to doctor, the root causes of eating disorders in dance, red flags to watch in young dancers, and the navigating of pressures in the dance culture, including the impact of social media, mental health, moving countries, and chasing big dreams. This is a powerful, eye-opening chat you won't want to miss. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for having me, Kate. Really pleasure and honour.
Oh, and I think we both have to thank Marie Walton because she introduced me to you and thinks that you would be such a wonderful contribution to our listeners with all of your expertise. So thank you for taking me up on the invitation.
Thank you so much.
Fun fact, we are only 5 hours up the road from each other in Germany.
Yep.
But we're still doing a long distance at all.
I was actually thinking about my grandma passed away a couple of weeks ago, and we still have to sell her house, and that's much, much, much closer to you. I think that should only be around like an hour to 90 minutes drive. So maybe there actually is a chance that we can meet at some point this summer.
Oh, I would absolutely love that. I'd really love to meet you in person. So,
So I've got this in the back of my mind.
Oh, good. Yeah, and it's been for me really nice to connect with you. And so I'm really enjoying watching your Instagram page as well and all the wisdom you have. And I love that you're trailblazing in this industry. So I would love for our listeners to know more about your personal journey from dancer to doctor to nutritionist.
So I was a full-time student and I was in my graduate year, end of the 1990s in London at the Erding Academy, and I fractured a vertebra. So it was a diploma in musical theatre, but it was still very ballet focused at that time. It's completely different today. And I was preparing for what is now advanced 2, I believe. Mm-hmm. I might be wrong, but I think it was the big advance at that.
Yeah,
you know that best. You know that best.
I do. Yeah.
And I fractured a vertebra. And then doctors in the NHS said the only option you have is to immobilize your spine. We can't tell you when or if you will ever be able to lift your leg derriere again. And I felt, now that's not for me. I went to see a second doctor. I went to see a third doctor. And he was in Zurich in Switzerland. And he was, I don't know, end of 70s, beginning 80s when I saw him. And he had been married to one of the principal dancers of Zurich Ballet and had a very special interest in dance. And he was such a lovely old man. So first of all, he took me to see a radiologist and said, we're going to, you're going to have some x-rays now. These are x-rays only we in Switzerland do. And then we can see better what's really going on with your vertebrae. And long story short, he spared me surgery. I had to do loads of physiotherapy then.
Wow.
But he's the reason why I didn't have any surgery at all, why I don't have metal plates in my spine and why I can still do lots of sports and even dance. He was just the absolute best person I could meet. But there wasn't a community like we have with iAdams today, or when the pandemic allowed us to connect with all those healthcare professionals around us and create these amazing networks. And so for me, it was, okay, he treated me, he sort of saved me, but there wasn't an idea of I'm going to go into dance medicine now, because that just wasn't existent at that time. But I went on to study medicine because that was something I had been interested in long before already. And it was, okay, either I do musical theatre or dance in general, or I do medicine. So I did medicine, and I would say I got back into the ballet studio probably halfway through my studies. I was fine by then, so it took some time, but I was fine and I could go back to the studio. But then medicine is so interesting. I got completely caught up in it, ended up working in global health. So this means you work in third world countries, developing countries. Yeah.
Yep.
It's probably the biggest unit we have in medicine, because you've got to understand different cultures. You've got to be part of projects trying to help them get their healthcare systems to a better standard or eradicate diseases. And I learned so much about different cultures, and I learned so much about our own arrogance in first world countries, what we think we need to bring to this world that very often is not what people want. So I got a little bit more into this, what's actually happening within the body, and then ended up in human genetics.
Wow.
So from biggest unit to smallest unit, I would say. But in human genetics, I felt the work environment in medicine can very much be relentless, as toxic as in dance. When I applied for a job, it was like, okay, you're going to work the first year for free, nothing. There's not going to be salary or anything. You're going to be here 24/7. Otherwise, you're just not going to make it in this discipline. And I was like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. So I found myself like, do I want to spend the rest of my work life, a big chunk of my life, do I want to spend it in this kind of environment? Ended up taking a sabbatical, found myself in Sydney Dance Company studios most days of the week. Probably not a surprise even. I made so many contacts there, and my background in medicine, and I see so many problems with nutrition. Nutrition plays such a huge role, and there's so many dancers here have such an unhealthy relationship with their bodies and with food. And I qualified in nutrition and medicine, which is something you can actually do in Germany, and then went on to study sports nutrition.
Wow.
And during all that, I set out as dancers overseas and started helping dancers from Australia move to Europe. And here we are today.
That's incredible. And in your experience, what are some of the biggest health challenges dancers are facing today?
I was just talking to a dancer yesterday and said, we know since 1980 that pre-professional ballet students usually expend more energy per day than they consume via food. 1980. So this was even a follow-up study. This means the author of this study, her name is Michelle Warren. She had started investigating these young dancers around 1976, 1977, and had published the results in 1980, and had clearly shown that this underfueling causes delayed maturation, causes a higher prevalence of injuries than other sports disciplines, for example, and could show that when these dancers were injured, not reducing their energy intake, so not reducing what they ate, they wouldn't put on weight in the sense this is communicated in the dance world today, because there is still this belief of when you are injured, you've got to restrict because you need to come back in shape, quote unquote, right? And she could show that this was actually not happening, but that there was a catch up with puberty, and that there was a better energy balance. And most people absolutely forget how much energy healing, whatever the injury, how much energy healing actually requires. So these results were published around the time that I was born. And we are still talking about the same things today. But this is why I'm bringing it up, because that is my whole life, and we are still fighting for recognition and acknowledgement of dancers. Many, many dancers don't eat enough. We have too much relative energy deficiency in sport. We have too many dancers in a daily, weekly, monthly energy deficit. We have too many injuries. We still talk about delayed maturation and all the negative effects of it. So we're still talking about the same things.
Where do you think these problems are coming from?
I try to remember what I once said in an Instagram post. It's about dance schools are usually a trigger. In most cases, they are a trigger. That last bit that is needed in order to then go from maybe disordered eating into a full-blown eating disorder. The susceptibility, the vulnerability is something the young dancers bring from home. So this is something that is usually set up in the environment at home already. So I'm always very, very, very careful. Yeah, it's a bit treading on eggshells.
Sure.
For me, it's not, dance schools are most of the time not the actual cause. They are one factor of many.
Yeah.
But I don't think that that means they can just do what they want and they don't have the honest care or the honest to make relentless environments or turn them into more nurturing ones. I still believe they absolutely must do that because we know that triggers are very, very powerful. But if you had a look at the sessions I run weekly, I would say 60, 70, maybe 80% of the dancers really struggle or have struggled already as kids at home with parents with narcissistic traits, with neurodivergent conditions being overlooked. There are parents not wanting to acknowledge that their kid is diagnosed with autism spectrum condition or with ADHD or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Most of them bring so many problems already into the studio that we can't say it's the dance schools causing all these eating disorders or this disordered eating or this negative body image. They are one part in it. They are a very powerful part in it. But I do see the very dark side of society as well. And with that, I mean, what's going on in families.
So as a hypothetical situation, what would that look like if you could explain a dark side? So a case scenario, just so people have that's what she means, that are listening.
Yeah. Think of parents where standards are different every single day. Kids are trying to fulfill or to live up to their parents' standards while they are developing, but they never know what to expect from the next day because the bar may hang very high, the bar may hang very low on that day, and you never know. So this builds insecurity. At the end of the day, they don't know who they really are because they're always trying to fulfill standards they don't know about really. Yeah. Standards where it's like, okay, do I have to be like this for my mom to be happy with me today? Or, can I just be myself? Most of the time they can't be themselves.
Yeah.
And this is what they bring into the studio. And if you then have a teacher with tough love, for example, or you have a teacher yelling at students, or you have a teacher talking a lot about bodies or doing lots of body comparisons, they will take this on and make this their own.
Yeah.
And this fuels very much a belief that they are not good enough for this world, that they will never make it, that they need to change themselves. And as there's not much between the ages, I say infant and probably 20 something that we can change about our lives, it's usually trying to grasp control of something. It's not a control really, it's a fake control.
Yes.
But that is food.
Yes. Yeah.
So if I can't control whether my mom loves me or whether my teacher likes me or whether I'm really seen in class or whether we have favoritism in class or, these sorts of things, then at least I can control that I look the skinniest. And maybe then I get seen. Maybe then I get cast for a role. These are things lots of dancers encounter.
And would you, in your experience, do you think social media, Instagram scrolling might be a contributing factor? Comparison?
It's difficult because it can be such a good way of connecting with others and learning that you are not alone and learning that others are struggling as well. But usually struggles aren't shared as much. It's usually the successes that we share. So it could have the absolute opposite effect, and you sort of want to connect, or you feel as rejected because you are not living up to the standards at your school, the standards of your parents, the standards you've made your own, even though you don't even know that they are not your own, but that you pick them up from your teacher or your parents. And it's a tricky place. And I very often recommend to parents, for those coming for sort of preventative sessions, they have a good chat with their kids, what they have on their feeds and who they follow, and to speak up when they say, oh, look, this person didn't make me feel good, and so on. Because at the ages 13, 14, 15, you still have the chance to do that as a parent.
Yeah. And so what advice do you have maybe for dance school teachers, ballet teachers that are teaching these children that might, like, are there any red flags they could look out for? And then that might be able to help in terms of having conversations with families, or if there are dance parents that are willing and open to maybe seeing, is there a problem, or what are some red flags in students?
Let's just start with the very obvious. That's injuries.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So is it an acute injury? Does it rather look like an overuse injury? Does it heal in time? Does it not heal in time? So red flags would definitely be in young dancers, overuse injury. We usually count stress fractures as overuse injuries, even though they are part of bones not developing the way they should during puberty. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's a question. Is it really an overuse injury, or is it a bone that could have totally withstood these demands, but it wasn't mineralized enough? So yeah, definitely red flags.
And while you're saying that about nutrition and development at that tender age of before puberty, during puberty, what does a good diet look like to support the development of a dancer, but also just of the human body?
It definitely is more than most people think. We've just had, again, studies in college dancers in the US, clearly showing that the majority of them is in a daily energy deficit, which the body can handle. It's not that we drop dead. The moment we don't meet our energy needs per day, we don't drop dead. Otherwise, humankind wouldn't be here still.
Yeah.
So our body is very smart, but our body allows us to still move, which many people find very puzzling. Why can my body still move if I didn't meet my energy needs for a couple of weeks or a couple of months even? Our genes they live still a couple of hundreds and thousand years back. And they think, okay, if I make this body move, then we could actually get closer to some food, and then we can survive. Then we can meet our daily energy needs again, but we need to move to another place. This is why we can still move. Yeah. It's not that our heart stops beating. That would be pretty unhelpful, I guess, but we can still move. And so everyone thinks like, well, as long as they can still dance, everything is fine. And it is actually not. A lot of things happen already before they plateau in training, for example, which is another red flag. They constantly wake up in the morning and they're not feeling refreshed. They constantly have sore muscles. Their muscles are feeling weak. And, as dancers, we usually think, oh, we are just, we're not having enough willpower. We are just not putting in enough hours in the studio, and we should be staying after class, and we absolutely should not. We should eat more, and we should go to bed, and we should have a very, very good catch up on sleep. So full-time training, you want to have a really good breakfast. You maybe want to have, after you've done your warm-up, breakfast, commute, warm up, you probably want to have a snack before class starts. There's also a huge discussion been going on recently about the structure of class, because the things that are most exhausting, like allegro, grand allegro, are done at the end of the class when glycogen stores get depleted.
Yeah.
Good point. I love this discussion.
Yeah.
There aren't snacks during class normally, so that you can say we can quickly restore a little bit of energy so that we can get through allegro and grand allegro more effortless.
What's a good snack? Like a good quick, if say for instance, if a ballet teacher's listening to this and thinks, good point, after pirouettes, they can have a drink break. What, even like a date, or like, what's a good quick? Exactly.
I so often recommend dates. Just a date, just some dried fruits, a few sips of a sports drink, of a mixture of, if you don't want to buy sports drinks because you find they taste horrendous, this is fine for some. I absolutely agree. I don't like this taste. Make your own mixture. Mix apple juice, orange juice, mango juice with water. That is totally fine. Some dextrose tablets. before anyone goes at me now, our muscles and our brain, they operate on sugar. They literally operate on sugar. In certain health conditions, our brain can convert chemical compounds that are coming from like the fat metabolism and use it as fuel. As a person without these conditions, epileptic seizures being one of them, without these conditions, we shouldn't rely on this type or this part of our metabolism. So our brain per day, usually 120 grams when we are stressed, even a lot more, up to 25% more. I mean, think of 125 grams table sugar, right? That's what our brain needs. We haven't been using our muscles by then. Yes, we have glycogen stored in our muscles. Glycogen is a multi-branched carbohydrate, but it's broken down into its smallest unit before it is used by our muscles. And that smallest unit is, again, glucose, a simple sugar. This is the natural default mode of our bodies. And that is what we need in order to fuel our brain and our muscles to their best so that our dance performance or our training can last the longest and still feel manageable. Going back to the snack in class so that Allegro doesn't feel like, oh gosh, we are starting it and we are already feeling exhausted.
That was me.
Same. Depending on the music, I could maybe just manage, some last fun effort for Grand Allegro, but let's be honest, most of us, I think, we're pretty much dying by Petit Allegro. Yeah, exactly. So if we could quickly fill up and eat some very rapidly absorbed carbohydrates, sugars in this case, it would feel more effortless, and additional plus, our body would feel less fatigued. It would recover better for the next day, thinking of all the classes we are having.
Of course. Yeah.
And last but not least, our stress hormone cortisol would also be kept in check, so it would not skyrocket. We need it, but we don't need it skyrocketing, because as soon as it skyrockets, us already exhausted, trying to get through Grand Allegro, it interferes with our body composition.
Really?
So it breaks down more muscle than it would if we were fueled.
Wow.
That's what's happening.
Oh my
And it's not rocket science. It's not rocket science.
So I think, can we go through a meal plan, like a day in the life of a dancer? Say she's around 14 even. We're going to get her in good habits for her career, his career, theirs, their career. I think this will be so educational.
Yeah. So first of all, shout out to all the schools that have a 15-minute break after every single class. I mean, that's perfect at the moment. You can't do better. So if you're doing that already, like, really, great job. So let's just assume they're having breakfast. So what are popular breakfasts? Yogurt, granola, and fruit. That's fine. Toast, avocado, eggs. Totally fine. Porridge, nut butter, fruits. Totally fine. So what you want is as much a balanced meal as you can. You want carbohydrates, you want dietary fats, and you want protein. Speaking about macronutrients, I mean, obviously you get a lot of micronutrients with fresh fruits, for example, but let's just stick with the macronutrients right now. And then you've got commute, and it depends on how long the commute is. Then the dancers usually warm up in the studio, and then 75, 90 minutes first class of the day, right? Sometimes 2 hours, it depends. So let's say anything between 75 minutes to 2 hours. And as that isn't the only workout that you'll be doing on that day, you definitely want to fuel either right before or during. Whenever I get to see dancers at a very young age, usually before they then move on into full-time training, we chat about their timetable that they get as soon as possible. And then we say, you've got to try whether you need something right before, whether you need something during class, whether that's possible, if that needs to be a sports drink or whatever. But somehow around this first class, you do want something. And then probably you've got either a repertoire or you've got point work as next class. You definitely do want a snack between these classes. And if it's the famous date or two while you are changing from ballet flats into point shoes, then hopefully you've got a lunch break that is longer than 30 minutes, because we would like you to eat something more substantial than just a tiny bit of here and there, a little bit of yogurt, spoon of granola also, that is not really essential.
What's it ideal for lunch?
Very good at sandwiches. Many of my dancers are really loving sandwiches, or just Tupperware box and some salad with quinoa and eggs. And eggs are pretty much light on most dancers' digestive system. Of course, you can also opt for, let's just say, quinoa and some veg and some salmon. So we would like you to have 45 minutes to 60 minutes in order to digest a very balanced meal. Saying this because there will be classes afterwards again. And the more classes we have per day, the harder it is for the body to recover. Dancers have ultra short recovery periods anyway. So, I mean, when did you go home in the evening? I think for me, that was very often like 6, 7, sometimes 8 o'clock in the evening. And then 9 a.m. next morning, I was back in the studio.
I think from memory, we were earlier. So we'd probably be in the studio by 7:30 and finish at 4 p.m. And then class would start at 8. So we'd get there by 7:30, warm up, class starts at 8. And then we did 5 days of that. Then Saturday was a half day.
And that means in terms of sports science and exercise nutrition, these are ultra short recovery periods. So this means between, whether that is your schedule or mine, between leaving the studio and going back to the studio, around 12 hours, 12-ish, 14 maybe, yeah, the body barely manages to recover well. And this is why we want a good breakfast, a good lunch, and at the end of the day, a very good and balanced dinner, and not like quick, just something. Yeah.
What time, ideally, should they eat dinner? How many hours before they go to bed should they have to digest the food?
Yeah. It depends very much on when their last class ends. So with many of them, we talk about the same things, by the way, in the afternoon, like we do for the morning, so that we say between classes, you absolutely want a snack. Also, we take into account that many contemporary classes require more energy. Contemporary is very often in the afternoon. So you will need some sports drink. You will need a bigger snack between classes. And then when they commute back, they very often have a post-last workout snack like chocolate milk, vanilla milk, chocolate milk, a bar if they like them, and then some carbohydrates, some fruits, for example, or a light sandwich like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And then dinner as soon as possible. But that very much depends on their accommodation. That depends on whether they still live with their family or boarding school or what else, dormitories and so on. So whatever the setting at that particular place is, sometimes they can't choose really. Sometimes they've got a bridge between 4 and 7:30. Sometimes they come home and can have dinner immediately. Probably most important in this aspect is having a post last workout recovery snack, because that really helps the body to recover while you are commuting home.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And between dinner and going to bed, well, we want young dancers to sleep as much as possible, preferably 8, 9, 10 hours. Rarely ever happens. We're so often fighting for 15 minutes more, 20 minutes more. It is often the case that they eat and then basically need to go to bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you listening out there, dancers? Listen to the doctor. And are the students training too much? How many hours a week should they train?
I found it amazing that Ian McKay, the newly appointed director of the Royal Ballet School, talked about this and said they train fewer hours and they eat more. So I can only applaud him.
Great.
Because that is exactly what needed to change, or needs to change in so many places still. As I said, when we're not meeting our daily energy needs, we get a little bit irritated. We think we're not having enough willpower. We believe last class and come on, let's stay in the studio and just do some extra work, some extra turns or whatever. And that's not what you need. You need to eat more, rest more, because your adaptation to training, fueled by growth hormone, is taking place when you sleep, because growth hormone only kicks in once melatonin has kicked in. So when you are ready to go to bed. Spending more hours is very counterproductive because it keeps both hormones pretty much baseline, and adaptation is just not taking place. I find it very difficult to say how many hours, because they're going through puberty. They will be at 14. There will be lots of girls and lots of boys at very different stages of how much they can actually do per week or how much their bodies can handle per week. But it definitely is less than it is in most places, right?
And you also, with Oz Dancers Overseas, help dancers transition. How did that start, and how can dancers better prepare themselves mentally and physically for moving overseas and for overseas training?
When I was in Sydney dancing myself, I got to know so many dancers that moved at this time and then got back in touch, and were like, oh, I got injured. Why did this happen? I'm only 2 weeks into the new curriculum here, and now I've got to sit and watch class. Or why can't I see a healthcare professional or a physiotherapist with a good idea of what dancers need? Like, why are things so different? Yeah. And so I started saying, okay, look, this is the situation where you are. This is what you find. This is what you can do. And then I thought, I've got to make this more accessible, and started posting about a lot of things. I would say ultimately now parents being aware of, oh, my kid is transitioning into full-time training overseas. Let's book a couple of sessions anywhere between 6 months prior to this move, or 2 months. And that is very helpful, because then we can talk about things like, what's the accommodation like? Are you able, or will you be able to prepare your own food? How will you be doing this? All these things where dancers otherwise move and are like, oh my God, I have no idea. What do I need to do?
I think that's a wonderful idea. I've got one of my students dancing in Denmark, and then someone I adjudicated at an Eisteddfod in Australia, they're not my students, lives Dresden.
Dresden, okay, yeah.
Yeah, he's in Dresden, and he's okay. But his mum did say, if he needs to ring anyone, can he ring you? And he's doing really well. So it would be absolutely daunting. And I know for me, when I was training, I got quite tall. And so the talk was, Kate will have to dance in Germany. She's a tall ballerina. She'll have to audition. And obviously I left before that process. But the thought of, well, oh my gosh, what does that look like? So I was not worldly. I wasn't traveled. I hadn't experienced, my world was like this. And I can imagine for many dancers, their world is like this.
Yeah.
And then to move overseas, that's great. You've got that service.
So it was the most fun in a way during the pandemic, because parents so often couldn't travel with them. So I found myself driving to Frankfurt Airport, like, I don't know how many times. And then really these are stories forever, and then pick up young dancers and, getting them to their new school. And I've seen so many things in this time. I've seen accommodations where we both went like, oh my God, what is that? There's so much mold in the fridge that is about to start speaking to us. And then, all this bureaucracy of saying, no, she can't live there, and having to do all these sorts of things. So I think I got a few insights I never knew I needed. That was definitely, there was more than one lesson. That was quite some lessons, I would say. And also seeing how schools care or don't care.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. There are definitely schools where housing is great. So the older ones have flat shares and the younger ones are in a boarding school. And then there are places where young students, like not even 18, and they're left alone. A new country, new language, and figure this all out.
I think that would be, I don't know if I could have done it, to be honest. That just would have been so overwhelming.
Totally. And it is. And I mean, even if you've got everything sorted, it is still so overwhelming, because so many Australian dancers come to Europe and they go like, oh my God, contemporary style. What? I've never done it before. Like, I'm more used to lyrical style. So yeah, there are so many challenges anyway. And lots of dancers, you probably see this in mindset coaching as well. Lots of young dancers move overseas and they are 15, 16, 17, and then all of a sudden they are not the best in their class anymore, because in their new class are all the best of,
The best, yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And there's so many things that will sort of overwhelm them. It's hard not to be overwhelmed, to be honest. So I always feel like, okay, come on, let's start talking making a team, your parents preferably, it works best if the parents are on the team as well. Do you know how to wash your clothes? Do you know how to cook, how to make breakfast? Do you know how to store things, food in the fridge, in the freezer? Do you know when to fuel with your timetable and so on? And then that takes away so much of the stress already.
Yeah. Adulting, right? Because I take my hat off to them. So I'm married obviously to a German man, but moving over here to Germany, I think after a few weeks I looked at my husband and I said, you make sense to me now. I get you, like on a whole other level, because I really got to getting to immerse myself in the German culture, and that can be intimidating, especially for a younger person.
Yeah.
I found it intimidating as a 44-year-old woman.
Yeah. So hard relate, really. I used to say when I came back from England and came back to Germany to see my mom, if you bump into someone in the supermarket in Australia or in the UK, both go like, oh, excuse me, right? Like,
Yeah.
Sorry for that. Here it's like, why are you in my way? And I'm like, oh my God, I haven't done anything wrong. You just ran into me. It's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's an experience I still have to this very day. I so often think like, oh my God, how would someone at age 15 feel like if that happens to them?
Yeah, of course. That would be really overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. And also, speaking of Germany, let's be honest, lots of the schools here still have teachers trained in the Veganova style. So that is a whole different culture in a new culture.
Yeah.
Which makes it, I would say, double, triple hard.
Yeah. The school I'm teaching at, funnily enough, the owner, she's Veganova style, and I've come in as an RAD teacher, and even the Batmon Frappe, flexing the foot, they point the foot and the students are looking going, what are you flexing your foot for? I'm like, why are you pointing your foot? I mean, I do know a bit of Veganova style. Marie introduced us to Veganova when we were full time. But yeah, that was humorous in my experience, but I can imagine for younger students all of a sudden changing their classical ballet styles. Yeah.
Totally. But honestly, dancers, dance students, parents, you can't do enough research before the move. You absolutely can't do enough research. We've had cases, it's not too long ago. I don't need to tell you that there's been like lots of scandals at European schools and companies, but more schools than companies in recent years. So I think I've got a reel with just the past 5 years on Instagram.
Are you allowed to share more?
Yeah. And so if your teacher says, oh, this is completely blown out of proportion, so parents, if you're doubting your decision because you've read something or you don't speak the language in either than German, French or whatever, and your teacher in Australia goes like, oh no, this is completely blown out of proportion, rest assured, what you read in the media is usually just a fraction of what's really being going on in these
What's an example of what you're talking about?
Berlin State Ballet School. Yeah, Berlin State Ballet School, for example. So we've had young dancers from Australia and they had picked up that there was a scandal. The typical body shaming, fat shaming, child well-being issues. And
yeah.
So pretty much all these things we've had within all the scandals. And the parents had asked the teacher and the teachers had said, no, this is a very nurturing environment. This is a great place to go. So long story short, after 2 weeks, the student had been yelled at, was body shamed. The conditions were not what they had been told. They would be left, didn't have another place for another year. And that is something, so I don't put blame on anyone. I know that you are not reading about these stories because nobody shares these stories. Yeah, but they happen. And that is not a single case.
One of my guests spoke very briefly about their time over here in Germany at a company, and of course didn't mention the name, but had the worst experience. But said to me that just the treatment and the languaging, the archaic teaching methods was so prevalent. And then mentioned something which I thought, this is really insightful, that ballet comes from Europe. So it felt like there was that hierarchy of an undertone with the way this certain company was actually running their classes, and like of superiority, I suppose. And anyway, ended up going home, and very talented ballet dancer, and having a career for I think a year and a half maybe. I know the companies in Australia are doing a lot better now. It's a sign of the times as well, and evolving. But yeah,
But isn't it funny? When I was doing RAD exams in Europe, and we had, I don't know who it was, I can't remember, but we had an examiner from Australia. Our teacher went like, "Oh my God, you're not going to get great marks because this teacher comes from Australia and they are just like, they've got the best dancers." And then we moved back to Australia and we go like, ballet comes from Europe. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Hold on, something's not quite right there. Like, why do we have all these misunderstandings?
Oh.
Why do we have all these beliefs? That's not particularly helpful.
No. And I had never thought of it like that though. But also, and I feel I shouldn't even mention the book because I haven't read it yet. But I heard the author being interviewed. I should quickly look up her name. But The Apollo's Angels, she goes into the history of classical ballet. And she said in this podcast interview, and I'll put in the show notes the author and the book title for anyone that's interested, but I did listen to her being interviewed about her book. And she said that classical ballet back in the royal courts with Louis XIV, the interpretation of it was that it was about royalty to feel godly, to feel close to God, but only the people living in the courts with a higher rank, the royals and the duchess and duchesses, and only they could do ballet.
Right.
They were allowed to do ballet. And so ballet does have this history of elitism, which is quite interesting. But that was the interpretation, to feel godly. So it's almost like this spiritual thing that didn't actually reach a spirituality of being, do you know what I mean? It was like
I totally know what you mean.
Bringing a level of religion into it or something. I need to read that book too, because I shouldn't even talk about it properly before I've read the book. I'll put it in the show notes. Sorry, keep going.
That is so interesting, because recently someone sent me a reel on Instagram where a teacher explains his divine touch, and everyone was cringing like, he should not be touching the girl that way. That's appalling.
And referring to it as divine? Who do you think you are?
And then I say so often that I always wonder how so many teachers still believe they can dish out advice on anything, whether that is how to execute a movement or how to set priorities in your life or how to fuel yourself. Like, any of these teachers would get totally upset if I, in my sessions, taught certain movements. Yeah. But they feel entitled enough to say like, but I know what you need to eat, like, better than I do. Right. And I used to joke and say, I don't understand why they feel so entitled. Do they think they gained universal knowledge by divine intervention? Yeah. And I used to make that a joke, sort of. But I feel like in this context, this is no longer a joke.
I think that's a really scary red flag, right? Like, my divine touch. How arrogant is that?
Yeah, it is. But also, how arrogant is it to say, I know better than anyone, and you've got to lock yourself into your room tonight in order not to go to dinner.
Of course.
That's abusive. That's not arrogant. That's abusive. But that
is highly abusive, yeah.
It's happening. How come in 2025 parents still sign contracts with schools where it's quite clear the students are being weighed every single week? There's no food allowed other than the one they serve in the canteen at the boarding house.
Yeah, wow.
And how was that? If any other food is being found, they will be expelled. Sort of, I mean...
Does that really, like, part of me just...
That was last month. That was last month, April 2025.
That's unbelievable, isn't it? That's so sad.
And that is Europe.
Yeah.
That was a school in Europe. And it really makes me think. So our conversation now really makes me think, and it makes me connect some dots I never connected before. But yes, that is still happening. It's wild. It's wild. We've got a school in Germany. They have a writing on the wall, and it says, let me just quickly translate. If you no longer feel pain, you are dead. Is that appropriate for someone 13, 14, 15, 16?
No.
Apart from it's not true. But
I think dancers are already hard enough on themselves as it is without that sort of culture. No.
It's completely, it actually really is I've got a photo, so I'm not just saying anything. I've got a photo.
Yeah, wow.
So parents back in Australia or wherever you are, do your research. Your research, really. Because if your kids arrive and then they find these sorts of things, it's probably not going to work out okay.
Yeah, of course. And for someone like the person I mentioned that they left, they got robbed of a career because we were talking about he was talking about his upbringing in dance in Australia, and he loved it. Came from a lovely family, came over here, had that awful experience and was just shocked. So it's not like he had any pre-existing type of trauma or was triggered. He was literally walked in fresh and had a not so great experience. It's sad. I do know of another dancer though over here. Good news. They lost a little bit of weight and they were asked to stop dancing until they've gained the weight back. And I loved hearing that. I think that's a positive change.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know more of that? Is that happening over here?
It is. So I was really shocked to see what was made of this interview that McKay gave to the Times, because what he's trying to do and also how he's trying to educate parents and get more parents into this is the world, this is what to expect, which I find absolutely amazing. We need this so much. He is one of the reasons why Nikki Kay and I run a almost monthly parent webinar. Just to say, look, this is how puberty should be. This is how it is very often in dance. What can you do? Because if you don't, what are potential outcomes? Or the next one is mom's relationship with their body and, starting perimenopause, and then the daughter's like losing their menstrual cycle because of underfueling and so on.
Yeah.
And that is something that we do because of EMK. And yes, there are schools where you have amazing healthcare teams where dancer data is safe, where they would do anything in order to make the dancers understand how important their mental and physical well-being is. Also, shout out to ABT JKO school in the US. So I have to say something really, really positive about schools in the US as well.
Yeah, great.
Chicago Jeffrey Academy as well. Great places at the moment. I see things happening there. I don't even know. That is so good. That is so good. But these places are still the minority.
Yeah.
The majority of places will have insufficient healthcare, insufficient supplementary training. The idea that female dancers need to be very light in order for male dancers to lift them safely. Think of the Acosta interview. That was horrendous. Think of European directors teaching students worldwide and talking about this is your responsibility, looking at all the female dancers in the room. And then the Australian Ballet having a special program in order to improve partnering skills in male dancers. And these are two sides of the dance world, but the one that values well-being and health is just still so small. It's so good, but it's so small.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? There's also Shane Worthner. I interviewed him in episode 8 of season 1. His take is we need to stop telling ballerinas to restrict their food for partnering. He said, no, you're not too heavy. He said the male dancers, and I'm sorry, Shane, if I've got this wrong, but the male dancers need to get stronger and do some do some other training, some cross training to get. So he's also been quite of a thought leader in Australia and globally, just with the way he's approaching. No, we've got to stop telling dancers to restrict their food. They're athletes.
They are. They are. They absolutely are, because they are athletes and they are so much more. This is how I like to say it. During med school, I did a lot of things, running half marathons and stuff. So, the thing is, I can dance one leg or I can run a half marathon, but I don't need to make the half marathon look pretty.
Yeah.
So they are so much more. However, what happens on a metabolic or physiological level, there's no difference between dancing swan leg and running the half marathon, really.
Wow.
Yeah, so everyone is fine. And that's what I said in my last reel when I was criticizing National Ballet of Canada's comments about running Act 4 multiple times and the dancers look so tired. Everyone's fine with, yes, of course, half marathon runners, they need to have their gels and sports drinks and maybe some bananas along the way. Swan leg, that's 5K for Act 4. Do that for every principal dancer. So you're somewhere between, I don't know, probably they have 3 pairs at least.
Yeah.
15K, 20K. So we are very close to a half marathon all of a sudden. In point shoes. I would never run a half marathon in point shoes. Fuel? I know, come on. It's not that hard. It's just pretty, right?
That's terrible. Yeah, that's... And there's another chat that's been going around. Are they paid well enough? I don't know that over here, but all that work.
It's not only all that work, it is that you so often can do all these adulting things you need to do. Like Lou was recently talking about it. You think you've got your schedule for the week, and then you make an appointment for, let's say, just Wednesday morning dentist. And Tuesday, 5 p.m., you get a new schedule for the next day because some rehearsals needed to be, I don't know, changed, change of time, change of whatever. Yeah. And then you find yourself calling your dentist saying, sorry, it's like the 5th time in a row that I can't come because my company just changed timetables. Are they getting paid enough for this? No, for sure not.
Yeah, no, some throughout my interview discussion process, some professional dancers have said no, the pay's terrible. And the directors are getting paid well, but the dancers not.
Yeah, absolutely. They for sure get paid well. And, I've had an encounter with one of the directors of a European company. It was 1 year, it's not too long ago, maybe like 5 years ago or so, before Christmas. Performances had to be cancelled. They made this public on Instagram because of too many injuries in the cast. And I thought, okay, hold on, we are almost 2020. This should not be happening anymore, right? Yeah. Wrote to the company, was invited for a chat with the director. And that was a 1-hour monologue of how all the dancers are much too lazy, never do their supplementary work, and just don't care really for themselves. And so it's not his choreography. It's not like the conditions within the opera house, like the studio floors and so on. It's only the dancers. And that was a lesson as well.
Yeah.
Insights you never know you needed.
Well, what's the one piece of advice you can advise a young dancer dreaming of having a career, navigating their health and potential in the industry? They're dealing with companies as well.
I would say you will encounter so many people who have an opinion about you, but don't let someone's false version of you become the defining story about you.
Oh, that's so powerful. I love that.
I really mean it.
Yeah.
So I so often talk with my dancers about pie charts and saying, here's a pie chart, you know how it looks like. Let's just say, what's your favorite color? Okay, let's take blue. Blue, it should be completely blue because it should be you. And I don't want to see 15 different colors in it because that is someone else's opinion that you made your own. And this is why I'm very often saying this. You will encounter so many people with an opinion.
Yeah.
But it's just one person, one opinion. Don't let that define you.
How beautiful. That's great advice.
Thank you.
Oh, my beautiful Stephanie. I really I just want more dancers to contact you. I think that I don't even know, you're probably so busy, but you have such a unique and specialized and excellent education and approach to help really shift some of these conversations in our industry to help young teachers, young dancers really have a think about how they can approach dance, ballet much more informed and holistically. And the thing I find is being holistic and well informed and well intentioned and coming through with some, really good communication skills for the kids, that makes you a better teacher. That doesn't make you a less than teacher. Or you can get even better results, more sustaining, long term.
Absolutely. I mean, I so often criticize teachers because, yes, a lot is happening in class, in the studio, during class, but also it's not an easy job. And I'm very aware of it. It for sure is not easy. And I know young teachers so often second guessing their decisions or what they said and so on. So I'm very much a fan of better education for teachers, better regulatory system.
Yeah. And so if the teachers, parents, young dancers want to contact you, how will they contact you? What's their best way of working with you?
It's usually either a DM on Instagram, which I normally then reply with, could you please just drop me an email, because Instagram, I don't think that's a very safe place. Don't send me too much info. Just ask, is this okay to contact you? Or you can also on my Instagram profile, just click my email, which is hello@ostdancersoverseas.com. And then I will reply ASAP.
That's great. Okay. So I've absolutely loved talking with you today, and I hope that you'll come on my podcast again, because I know that I want to pick your brain even more about so many other things.
Thank you.
I feel like we just cracked open.
I think yes, we did.
But you gave so much information and insight, and I know there's even more. Will you come on again? I
absolutely would. Because I love these moments of saying, oh my God, we just connected some dots. Never connected before.
I know. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for all of your gorgeous wisdom, insight, education, and heart. I just adore you, and I'm so grateful Marie put us in touch with each other.
Thank you so much. And yes, grateful to Marie. Absolutely.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Kate. Thanks for having me.